If everyone could take a seat or try to at least quiet down a little bit. Thank you very much. Good evening. I'd like to welcome all of you to this evening's candidate forum. This is the third of a series of ongoing forums to introduce the candidates running for county and state office to the citizens of Takoma Park and the surrounding area. The attendance tonight certainly testifies to the fact that democratization has already occurred in Takoma Park, and we're glad that you're here. I'm Bruce Moyer, and I'm the president of the Westmoreland Area Community Organization, and want to thank you for being here, and particularly to thank the two candidates this evening, Ida Rubin and Jamie Raskin, for their participation. We look forward to an informative and a lively exchange of views from the candidates. This forum is being broadcast live on the Takoma Park cable channel and will be webcast on the Takoma Park channel website. So that if you'd like to go back and take a further look at it, just go on the Takoma Park City website. I'd also like to, before turning it over to Eric Bond, the moderator for tonight's forum, to thank the sponsors of these forums, Takoma Voice, Old Town Residents Association, the Westmoreland Area Community Organization, Between the Creeks Neighborhood Association, the North Takoma Citizens Association, New Hampshire Garden Citizens Association, the Ritchie Citizens Association, and the South of Sligo Citizens Association, along with District 20 Democratic Precincts 1304 and 1306. Eric Bond, the publisher of the Takoma Voice, will moderate this evening's forum and ask questions that have been submitted by members of the community. I know that something like 70 questions have already been submitted. I don't think we'll probably get through all of those, but Eric does a great job, and with that, we'll turn it over to Eric and the candidates.
Hello? Okay. Thank you very much. It's already hot in here. Good evening and welcome to the 2006 Takoma Voice Election Forum for District 20 Senate candidates in the Maryland General Assembly. This area covers Takoma Park and a sizable portion of Silver Spring. Before we begin, I would like to thank the Takoma Park City Cable for their assistance and cooperation with all of these forums and helping us to provide an informative evening to residents of Takoma Park. Tonight I'm joined by the incumbent Senator Ida Rubin and her challenger Jamie Raskin. Both are Democrats. There is no Republican or other candidate for this office. This forum is being simulcast on Channel 13 and will be aired several times over the weeks leading to the Democratic primary on September 12th. For times, please visit the City of Takoma Park website, which is takomagov.org. In addition, video will be available on the City of Takoma Park I'm sorry. You can also check for streaming video on the Takoma Park website. Our format tonight will be as follows. Each candidate will give a 2-minute opening statement. Then I will begin asking the candidates to respond to questions submitted to me by their potential constituents, you. And I have received at least 70 questions through email. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer a question, but you do not need to fill the entire time. And you'll have 1 minute to clarify if necessary. When your time is up, I will indicate it by thanking you for your response. If I cut into the middle of one of your sentences, I am not being rude. I'm simply letting you know that your time has expired. In your answers, I would ask that you try to be specific and avoid platitudes. Those of you in the audience tonight, please feel free to submit questions to me via the paper we have set up on the table over here. I do have many questions, as I said already, but we have volunteers who can bring questions up to me if one occurs to you. I'll try my best to ask some form of all questions, but I know I will not be able to. We simply have too many. If your question is not asked, be aware that the Voice will be sending out a questionnaire in the next few days, and we will try to include your question. At 9 o'clock, we anticipate opening up the mic for questions from the audience. And there, again, is no way that we're going to be able to answer everybody's question. As 9:30 approaches, I'll ask each candidate to provide a 1-minute closing statement. This is a long program, so I appreciate the willingness of both candidates to participate, and I appreciate their eagerness to represent this politically active community, our hometown, in the General Assembly. For opening statements, we'll begin with Mr. Raskin.
Eric, thank you very much, and thank you for bringing a little bit of global warming inside here. I'm delighted to be here with Senator Rubin and with all of you, and I particularly want to thank those of you who have changed your summer vacation plans to come watch the debate this evening. My goal is a simple one. I want to be the best state senator that District 20 has ever had. I want to be the most creative and effective legislator. I want to be the most responsive and detail-oriented constituent advocate, and I want to be the most energetic and visionary champion of the common good that District 20 has ever had in the state Senate. Now, it's a tall order I've set for myself because we've had honorable service rendered by Senator Rubin for nearly 3.5 decades, and by Stuart Bainum before that, and Victor Crawford before that. But I come before you to say that the politics of yesterday don't meet the challenges of tomorrow. The politics of yesterday are we have 88,000 people without health insurance and primary health care in Montgomery County, and 10 times that number statewide, and we proceed with business as usual. The politics of yesterday is millions of dollars of corporate and special interest cash floating around in our elections, and we act as if we can conduct ourselves in that way and still pursue the common good. The politics of yesterday is William Donald Schaefer proves himself to be a racist, a sexist, a harasser of women, an attacker of minorities, and the machine politicians don't say anything. But tonight, I call for his resignation from the office of comptroller. And I would ask Senator Rubin also to join me in calling for on Senator Rubin for the resignation of William Donald Schaefer tonight. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. I'm delighted to have you all here, and thank you for taking your time on this very hot evening to come and listen to the two candidates for the Senate in District 20. First, I'd like to talk about my family, if I may, because I know you all are family-oriented and care so very much. I have a husband who is wonderful, and we've been married quite a few years. I have 4 sons that I've raised, 4 daughters-in-law, and they're like my daughters, and I have 6 of the most gorgeous grandchildren everyone ever saw. I have lived in my house for 44 years. Now, I know you're going to wonder how that can be when I'm only 39 years old, but I would fight very hard for this community. I do that because I know the family unit is so important to you. I want you to know I am a strong leader. I am a progressive leader. I am an influential leader. I am not what you call a person who goes and listens to everything that leadership says. I took on the leadership in the Senate when I voted against slots, and I took the floor against slots. I was elected by my colleagues as the President Pro Tem. I am the chair of the Montgomery County Senate delegation, and I was elected by my colleagues. I am the vice chair of the capital budget, which is extremely important to all of you in this room. You're sitting here in the very community center when the city came and asked for help, and we came to the call to help. I have fought for many projects. I have been instrumental in getting English speakers of other languages money, the ESOL program. You might say I'm the mother of state money for ESOL. I want you to know that I worked extremely hard on the revitalization of Silver Spring, and I have the scars to show for it, when I brought home $37 million and had the Baltimore City area opposing it. There's more.
We'll have time for more of that.
Okay.
I'm going to start out with a rather general question, and I'll begin with you, Ms. Rubin.
Okay.
What do you think are the most challenging issues facing the Maryland Senate in the coming year, and how do you propose dealing with them?
One of the most challenging issues at this time is ensuring that our education, our Bridge of Excellence, which is the Thornton Commission, is fully funded. The governor has not fully funded the educational system. I put in a bill that would mandate that he fund the Geographic Cost of Education Index, which is the GCEI. I was the floor leader on it. I got it through the Senate. There were problems in the House. We understand why it couldn't get through there, because there was a challenge and a little glitch. But I will go back and make sure that that GCEI money is in the budget. Health care is one of the most essential things we must address. Everyone in this state is entitled to have health coverage, and I will tell you that I will make sure that we do. I fought the governor to fund the CHIPS program, which is Children Health Care Initiative. He cut it, and I wrote him and I fought him to make sure that in budget and tax, on which I serve, made sure that it was back in the budget. Smoking. I am the sponsor of the Indoor Smoking Act. I want that bill to pass. I have commitments on votes from the people that are on that committee that this year it will pass. We need to make sure that we cut our health costs. People are smoking and they're dying and they're suffering from a terrible death. It's the third most defendable health death that we can make sure doesn't happen in this state. It's passed so many states. The Purple Line, that has to be built. We know that it's needed, and we've got to make sure it's funded. The highway safety issues are extremely important to us. People are dying every day, and I had that covered truck bill passed. It took me 15 years. You don't go down there and say, I'm doing something today and tomorrow. Sometimes you have to have the tenacity to keep on going, and it took me 15 years to get that bill through, and I did. The seatbelt bill. I got the seatbelt bill, mandatory seatbelt, through. It took me 5 years, but they finally came around. Thank you.
Thank you. If I can I'd like to make an announcement before we move to Mr. Raskin. If you are in a campaign, if you are involved in a campaign, if it's possible for you to give up your seat to other people who are, not...
Raskin people get up.
With such a crowded house, that would be useful. There are some people who I think could use a seat. They were looking for chairs. And if anybody can find chairs, please do. Okay.
Can we have people sit up here or no?
They almost could. People can sit anyway.
Okay.
Shall we continue?
Sure. Let me sit down.
And I'll ask the question again. What do you think are the most challenging issues facing the Maryland Senate in the coming year, and how do you propose dealing with them?
Health care is critical. We've got 800,000 people in the state who have no health care. That's a scandal. And it's a public health hazard and a danger to everybody. Senator Rubin's been in office for more than 3 decades, said in the Gazette, September 25th, 2002, that so-called universal health care is not the answer. So-called universal health care is the answer. A doctor for every person in Maryland. Now, we've got to start with kids. 125,000 kids who are not covered by the CHIPS program. We are the the richest county in the 4th richest state in the richest country on earth. And there are countries that provide health care for all their people. My friends, we in Maryland can provide health care for everyone who lives in our state. We can make that happen. We can make it happen. But we need the political will to do it. The purple line is essential. And we need to make a visionary reinvestment in public transportation and metro. When I was a kid growing up here, I remember people said we should continue to build freeways and highways, a bunch of freeways going into the city, cutting through people's neighborhoods and communities. And it was the Great Society and LBJ which said we need a transportation system that's going to serve all of society and the whole community, cutting across lines of race and class and ethnicity and income. And we need to do the same thing today. And I don't think I would have gone the same road as Senator Rubin, who became one of the key champions of the ICC over the last decade. That project is going to cost $3 billion, hundreds of millions of dollars taken out of our general fund, the same fund that we use for schools and parks and health care and the other priorities that we need. So it's easy to get up and say you're for the purple line, but we need to make an investment in public transportation. We need to break from the failed politics of the past. And let me say this.
Oh, thank you.
Oh.
Thank you.
Would you like to clarify?
Please. Yes. There was a universal health care bill in the Senate and in the House. I was one of the co-sponsors. As far as the purple line is concerned, I saved the money in the Budget and Tax Committee on the capital budget, making sure that they didn't remove the $4 million for the environmental impact statement, the final environmental impact statement. There was language that they tried to put in for the purple line. I made them take it out and put more positive language into the bill so that we were sure to get the money to move the purple line forward. There's a lot of resistance to it. There will be the money for it. You can be sure of that. When I go back on budget and tax, and I am the vice chair of the capital budget, I have a lot of influence as a leader in the committee. Budget and tax is the most important committee in the Senate, and sometimes it is the most important committee in the state. I will tell you that I will be there to fight for every single thing. You can have all the programs you want, ladies and gentlemen, all of them, and we all want good things for our state. But if you don't have the money to fund them, forget it.
Well, I think we need to have an honest conversation about money and the role that money plays in our political system. Now, Senator Rubin, in 1999, voted 7 times for the utility deregulation that has given all of us, on average, a $468 hike in our utility bills starting this summer. And the progressive senators like Chris Van Hollen and Brian Frosch warned against it. And they said, don't go that way. But Senator Rubin voted for it 7 times. Now, let's talk about the money that's swimming in our political system. Senator Rubin introduced legislation to double campaign contribution limits from $10,000 a year to $20,000 a year. Are there many people in this room who feel consoled that they can now give $20,000 in campaign contributions? They were capped out at a mere $10,000. That's big business special interest legislation. My first bill, when I get into Annapolis, will be for 100% voter registration of all students in Maryland and 0% corporate funding of our elections. I think we're inviting seniors or others to come sit up here with us. If there are people who want to come sit up here.
But we don't have another. Yeah. Where's the AV crew?
We're working on it.
Okay, great.
How's my mic?
That's fine.
Are you sure it's not my speech that's the problem?
Was that sounding better? I mean, I did hear it before, but
Okay.
All right. I'm gonna ask you a question now, Jamie.
Good.
On your campaign website, you say that we need to take Maryland back from right-wing Republicans. Yet you're running against a Democrat who has risen to significant power in the Maryland Senate, President Pro Tem and chair of the Montgomery County Senate delegation. She holds many of the same progressive positions that you do, such as support for same-sex marriage and universal health care. How will your election over Ms. Rubin address your goal of taking Maryland back?
Thank you for that excellent question. I think goes to the heart of this race. I don't want to be just a safe vote, much less a machine politician. I want to be a champion for the values and the priorities that define Silver Spring and Takoma Park. So Senator Rubin, for example, has said that she opposes the Republicans' proposed anti-gay marriage constitutional amendment. I went and testified on that bill, and a member of that committee told me that my testimony was the key testimony that defeated and turned that around. I want to be a leader for the values that define District 20. Now, how much time do I have now?
A minute 18.
Okay. I want to talk about this question of effectiveness, because I think that we have to define the different dimensions of effectiveness. And certainly, one aspect of effectiveness is longevity in office. And on that vector, Senator Rubin has me beat hands down. All I can say to that is, thank you very much. All I can say about that is that she entered the Senate as a freshman, and I will enter the Senate as a freshman, and everybody, alas, at some point must leave the Senate. Okay? But there are other dimensions of effectiveness. One of them is relationships with people. So, for example, Martin O'Malley is a very good friend of mine, but I didn't endorse him in this race because I wanted to maintain my influence with either Governor O'Malley or Governor Duncan, depending on who won. Senator Rubin endorsed Doug Duncan for governor and now finds herself in an odd position with respect to our standard bearer. I'm not in that odd position, and he has said very kind things about me. I will be extremely effective with Martin O'Malley. Senator Sarbanes has not taken a position on our race, and I have a very close relationship with Senator Sarbanes, and I have a very close relationship with Congressman Chris Van Hollen. If we want to get the Purple Line done, if we want health care for our people, we need to be able to deal with every other leader in the state, and I can do that.
Okay. Ms. Rubin, over the years you have accomplished a lot in the Senate, many of which you alluded to in your opening statement. Yet some voters see you as representing a too comfortable status quo. What makes you a vital candidate of our future?
First of all, I am a fighter for this county and this district. I have gone into battle for the needs of our county. You know, a lot of the people in other jurisdictions think we have gold line streets. Well, we know that's not true. You have to go in there and fight for the dollars for Montgomery County. I want you to know that I have wonderful relationships with the people. Mr. O'Malley called me as soon as Mr. Duncan decided not to run. And I have worked with him. I will be working with him and the senators. All of my senators are working together. As the chair of the Senate delegation, I don't rule them. We work by consensus, and they're wonderful. We have been so successful because we work as a team. I have the endorsement of Barbara Mikulski, Mr. Hoyer, Mr. Wynn, Mr. Cardin, I have so many I can't even go into all of them. But I want you to know that it doesn't matter who endorses you. You have to work yourself. You've got to be able to work with the other people in your Senate chamber, the people in the House. I have those relationships. I've established them. I have a wonderful way of going to them and saying, I need this. I want to help you. I know what your needs are, and I'm going to help you get them. All I want is what Montgomery County needs. I have worked with 4 county executives to make sure that we carry the county's priorities through to the end. And we've been successful. I brought home $38 million for Silver Spring revitalization, and we're not finished yet, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to do more, and we're going to bring Birchmere here, too. You can be sure of that. All I ask is that you help me go back, because I know I can help you. Just give me that opportunity. I'm not yesterday's person. I may have been. I'm today's person. I am tomorrow's person, because I've got the wherewithal and the tenacity and the ability to do that.
Let's take a minute.
I've been walking across the district. I've knocked on more than 2,000 doors. So I've been talking to a lot of people who live in Silver Spring and Takoma Park, from downtown Silver Spring and East Silver Spring and Oakview all the way out to White Oak and Colesville. We've got a great district. We've got an amazing district, an amazing community here. And we've got some of the finest doctors and public interest advocates, lawyers, energy specialists, transportation experts, social workers, community change agents, epidemiologists, artists, writers, people who live here. They are totally disconnected from the tiny little political machine that's been serving its own political interests. And I am running to bring these people into our politics. That's why I'm running. We are not going to be able to solve the problems of the future with the old style politics. We need a politics of commitment, engagement, and participation.
Well, we will stop when I say thank you. Great.
Thank you. Do you have a question for me?
Oh, just if you want to,
yes,
you want to follow up.
Yes, I do. Let me just say that for 32 years I have served this district. Before that, I was an activist in the Democratic Party. I just didn't walk into a seat. I didn't come and say I want that seat. I worked hard. I helped other candidates with their elections, and I made sure that this district had what it needed at all times. I respond to every constituent service. I can't even go to the grocery store without people stopping and saying, thank you for what you did for me. I don't just talk the talk, ladies and gentlemen. I have walked that walk, and I need to continue. I want to go back and talk about, I want to respond to my opponent's accusation about corporations and machine politicians. I want you to know that he had a brochure that he sent out. It was a very nice brochure. He had a quote from someone on that brochure telling everyone that he was the next person that is going to do everything and anything. That person, ladies and gentlemen, is a lobbyist for developers and corporations.
I have no problem whatsoever if people sit on the dais back here. Anywhere you can grab a seat, go for it. We don't need to have all this space up here. Well, you know, you guys are standing like you're in steerage back there.
Do I get a response to that? Or?
Oh, no.
Oh, okay.
You had your response.
Okay.
We'll get to we have future responses. I'm going to get a little parochial here and talk about Takoma Park. And I guess, let's see, we started with you last time, Jamie, so start with you, Senator Rubin. Maryland law favors counties over cities when it comes to raising revenues. For example, limiting cities to a 17% share of locally allocated state income taxes paid by the residents. The other 83% goes to county of residents. What would you do to level the playing field for Takoma Park and other Maryland municipalities?
That kind of legislation will come before Budget and Tax, the committee on which I serve. That's the kind of pull that I would have with my seat on Budget and Tax to ensure that that percentage is raised. It's very important to us to make sure that Takoma Park receives its just desserts, I might add. My colleagues and I in the past 10 years have brought home to Takoma Park $60 million. I want to repeat that. We've brought home to Takoma Park $60 million. As I said before, that all came about because I was on Budget and Tax Committee. I want you to know that there are more things. That the Montgomery College. I brought home, I can't even remember how much money, the pedestrian bridge. the student government building, the new arts building, the auditorium. That money we had to fight for. I fought for that money. I brought it home. My colleagues and I worked together to make sure it came home. You need someone like me to stay there, to use my leadership, to use my influence, to make sure that you have a fighter on your hands for this district and this county and Takoma Park. I haven't left. I don't intend to leave, and I need your help to make sure I go back and bring more money home for this district, and this District 20. But let me just say again, there are so many issues that we must consider when we do the budget. I'm on the budget committee. I go through it every time, public safety, environment, health, you name it. But again, we have all these programs, and everyone's fighting for that dollar. Without the money, you have no programs. You must make sure you have someone there that's willing to address the issue and, if necessary, find new revenue other than slots to fund all of this. And I'm that person.
Mr. Raskin?
Let me just say one thing about this bringing home the money question that I got from a very nice woman who I met out in Hillendale. And she said, we knocked on her door, and she said, well, I was up late last night arguing with my husband about your race. And she said, we totally believe in your politics. We totally believe in where you're going. And I told him I'm voting for you. And he said, well, I got a scholarship once from Senator Rubin's committee, because all of the state senators have a pot of money they can use to distribute scholarships. And he said, so I'm not sure, because I would like to vote for Raskin, but I did get this money. And she said to me, I told him that that's our money. That's the people's money. And you got that money because you deserve the money. And so if some politician comes to you and says, you've got to vote for me because I brought you money, there's a very simple answer. The money was ours to begin with. And by the way, this is a democracy. It's not feudalism. It's not feudalism. Now, let me say something about the corporation question. About half of the states have banned corporate contributions in order to reduce corporate influence. This is a serious question. I'd like a serious answer from Senator Rubin. Would you join me in calling for a ban on corporate contributions in our politics? It's a serious question. We don't allow non-citizens to vote in state and national elections. We do allow them to vote in local elections in Takoma Park, but that's different. Okay. But we don't allow non-citizens to vote, and we don't allow them to give money. And corporations are not citizens. They can't vote. They're not human beings. Why should they be able to put $4,000 into our race? Why should dozens of corporations be able to put $4,000 into our race? That's wrong. And so, if we're going to have a democracy, 100% voter registration through the high schools, let's become the first state in America to register everybody to vote. So everybody's represented in these rooms in these elections, and 0% corporate funding.
Would you like a minute to respond?
Sure. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I am not going to make a commitment not to have corporations fund campaigns, and I'll tell you why. It may be that I will. I have to listen to what the arguments will be. But you know what? Corporations aren't individuals. Thank you for your politeness. Thank you. Corporations are not just one person. Corporations bring money to a lot of people. I am not saying that they should be giving large sums, and the corporation dollars that my opponent is talking about, where I wanted to raise the $10,000 to $20,000, that was a bill that didn't touch that $4,000, I want you to know. That was the bill that said those people that are eating up the statewide money, and it is being eaten up, ladies and gentlemen, when it gets down to a senator or a House member, people are maxed out. That's what they say. We have given all the money that we can. We can't go over $10,000, and that's important. But that legislation was passed in the 70s. We are in 2006. I asked you, how much did you have to spend in 70s versus how much it costs you to live now? I think that's the answer.
Thank you. And let me also add to try to keep your enthusiasm civil.
All right. Okay. So no large sums. I don't take any corporate money. Will you return corporate contributions beyond, say, $1,000 that you've accepted? I think it's wrong. We saw with the utility deregulation, which Senator Rubin voted for 7 times, what happens when we have corporations bankrolling our politics, spreading around millions of dollars in lobby fees and campaign contributions. We should build a wall of separation between corporations and citizens. Now, Senator Rubin's absolutely correct when she says a corporation's made up of a lot of people, but guess what? All of those people as individuals have every right to give $4,000 as people. The corporation is a form of double dipping when the corporation can also give you $4,000 and their law firm can give you $4,000. And believe me, as a challenger in the state of Maryland, it concentrates your mind when your opponent is raising tens of thousands of dollars from corporations, partnerships, and casino and gambling money.
You know, I could continue with more on campaign finance. We could continue, I guess, with campaign finance. I have a lot of questions actually related to that. So we'll start with you, Mr. Raskin. Public funding of presidential campaigns has largely failed, yet legislation proposed for Maryland would create a voluntary publicly funded campaign finance system. What's your take?
I am for clean election financing, the kind that we've got in Arizona, Massachusetts, and Vermont right now. And essentially, the way it works is a candidate will go out and raise small contributions of like $5 or $10 from a lot of people, like 250 or 300 people. My campaign, by the way, whoever sends in a check tonight, you may be the lucky 1,000th donor. So we're not going to have the same amount of resources as the incumbent, but we're certainly going to have a lot more contributors, and that means a lot to me. But I want to say that we're never going to get to clean election financing until we get the corporate money out of our politics. And so it's easy to say you're for clean election financing, but we're not going to get to clean election financing if we continue to have corporate-run campaigns and big business campaigns. As Democrats, can we agree that we should be the party of the people and not the party of big business? Can we agree about that?
Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. Ladies and gentlemen, I understand how my opponent feels about corporate contributions. However, I think I heard that he was having a fundraiser on the 27th at a corporate law firm downtown called Arnold & Porter. Now, is that talking about corporations the way you want them to? I mean, they're donating their space. Isn't that a contribution? Even though you're not accepting money from them, that's their space. It just seems to me that we have tried this before. We had a pot of money that was voluntary, that was in for statewide offices for the governor, and nobody took advantage of it. That money sat in the fund for years until finally we released it to the general fund. It's wonderful if you have mandatory funding for campaigns from each individual person. It's not going to happen that way. People in this area, for some reason, do not necessarily want to contribute. I would like to see everyone contribute $5 or $1 or $2 to a campaign. And if every voter did that, we'd be in great shape. It would have to be done through the state, I guess, or through the counties, whichever way you want. But I want to be realistic about it. If it can be done, yes, I'm for it. We have to make sure that when we do it, it is successful. Now, my opponent keeps talking about corporate contributions. He's put such emphasis on it. He wants to make sure that he gets it there, and he wants to make sure that every student, before they graduate from high school, has to register to vote. I think that's a wonderful goal. But if I remember correctly, you can't make these students register to vote before they graduate. And what happens to those students that want to graduate that are not citizens and can't register to vote? Do you set them out as examples of people, make them feel that much more left out? I think that has to be rethought a little bit before we proceed with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's see. Senator Rubin, in the last election cycle, raised 6% of her money from individuals who live in Silver Spring and Takoma Park. 6%. 94% came from people, corporations, partnerships, special interests, lobbyists outside of Silver Spring and Takoma Park. Now, how are we going to get a progressive politics that pushes a progressive agenda for universal health care, universal pre-K, strong environmental enforcement, if that's who's calling the shots? My money comes from within this district and individuals who support me and support my program from around the country. It doesn't come from corporations. I want to thank you, Senator Rubin, for mentioning my upcoming fundraiser on TV. It's July 27th with Congressman John Conyers, the next chair of the House Judiciary Committee, Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton, the delegate from the District of Columbia, who I've worked with closely, a fellow law professor at Georgetown, Professor Charles Ogletree from Harvard Law School. And the reason why Honorable Reporter is sponsoring is because I've brought them in to do pro bono work in this community with me, defending the rights of tenants.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. It seems to me that my opponent, unless I've heard wrong, had a fundraiser in Manhattan. That's not in District 20. It would seem to me that he had one in Baltimore City. I don't know that that's true, but that's what I was told. I agree that it's difficult to raise money and that sometimes you can't stay within the confines of your district. You have people that you've done things for. I'm President Pro Tem of the Senate. I consider the whole state mine. I'm chairman of the delegation. I consider the whole county mine. I brought money home for Strathmore, for the conference center, for Imagination Stage, for Roundhouse Theater. You name it. I've done it in the county. But ladies and gentlemen, my opponent thinks I've been there too long. He said that over and over again. Congressman Conyers is coming to his fundraiser as a guest. Congressman Conyers has been in his position for 40 years.
Okay, we talked about, we'll have a chance to hit these things again. We can go back and forth on campaign finance for another 20 minutes, but let's move on to another question. Senator Rubin, we have a question from a local business owner, and she wrote to me and said, downtown Silver Spring has experienced a great revitalization in recent years. How do you foresee helping promote businesses that are not located directly on Ellsworth? It seems that the sole attention is focused only on those businesses.
I'm delighted to hear that question because I want them to know that there is a fund for small businesses, and I'd be glad to help that individual if they would call me and direct them to the appropriate agency. We need to help the individuals that have stayed a long time in Silver Spring. Prices for rent have gone up dramatically, but that's what comes with revitalization. I want to mention to you that I was the originator of the Arts and Entertainment District down in Silver Spring. I came up with the idea, and I came up with the idea, and it has worked. Let me tell you, we are attracting artists, we are attracting artistic businesses, and I will tell you, between those two, we are really going strong. What we have done is we've got things going on in the north of Silver Spring, and we've got things going down in the south. We are moving into the middle to make sure that we ensure that people that have businesses that have been there and dedicated to staying there, stay there, and we are ensuring that new people come in because we want to make sure that all of Silver Spring is revitalized. And I'm going to be there to do it. I'm going to make sure that we go to the state for money for Birchmere. I'm going to make sure they come. I'm going to make sure that we have money from the state for every single area of Silver Spring and Takoma Park that we need. And you can be sure I'm going to be in the front line to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. Raskin, how do you foresee protecting, helping promote businesses that are not located directly on Ellsworth?
Well, the first thing is I've got a plan to save businesses in Maryland tens of millions of dollars a year by banning corporate contributions in our elections, okay? But there's a serious issue here, which is that it was our community that resisted the proposals to put in things like the Mall of America and Disney in downtown Silver Spring. It was people like Steve Silverman and people in this room, Marlena Valdez, my campaign chair, who fought for the right kind of development in Silver Spring, and we have to continue to struggle as a community, and I will be responsive only to you, only to the people of our district, and I will be a champion of the small businesses and the people who make Silver Spring the special place that it is. Do I have a second to respond to some of the things that were thrown up before? Yes, I'm very proud of the fundraiser that I had in Baltimore City with Mayor Martin O'Malley, who's a close friend of mine, who is going to be the next governor of Maryland. I'm going to work closely with him to fight for the progressive priorities that we need. I'm very proud that I had, again, a fundraiser in New York City, all with individuals, featuring Rick Hertzberg, who's a champion of electoral reform and the editor of the New Yorker magazine, and Katrina vanden Heuvel, who's the editor of the Nation magazine. And these are all individuals who are supporting my politics and my political program. And I'm not certain, Senator Rubin, you would want me to read down the list of corporations and utilities that have given you money over the last several years. I'm proud of everybody who's given me money, and I'm still going to end up way behind the incumbent because that's the way that politics works here. But I believe I will be the best finance challenger in the state of Maryland, and we certainly have the most vigorous, dynamic, and boisterous grassroots campaign that District 20 has ever seen. And
we have about 10 seconds left. Go ahead.
If I am told I have 10 seconds, let me just say I hope John Conyers never leaves office, and I hope Senator Kennedy hangs in for as long as he can, and Senator Byrd. The point is not that you've been there too long, Senator Rubin. The point is that your politics are wrong for our district.
I'm sorry, I was under the impression you had said that your contributions came from this district, so I apologize if I was wrong. But I have my campaign contributions online. Anybody can go there and see it. I don't know that Mr. Raskin has exposed his contributions, and I believe if he's challenging me, why haven't you listed your contributions and your contributors online like most people will? I know it's due the 15th of August, but there's no reason why you can't put it on before then. So if you're going to talk about my contributors, why don't you expose yours? You know, everybody can hoot and holler and scream for their candidate. I think what's important is the record that I have in Annapolis. I'm very proud of my record. It's a liberal one, it's a progressive one, and it's one that I'm going to continue to do forever when I'm there. I'm not ashamed of what I've done. I am not a machine politician. I am an independent voice there. Just ask Mike Miller. He'll tell you.
Okay, moving from the parochial to the global. Let's see. Am I back to you, Mr. Raskin? I lost track. We'll start with you.
Doesn't matter.
Okay. We have a question about whether or not you've seen An Inconvenient Truth, the recent documentary featuring Al Gore. If so, do you agree with Al Gore that global warming is the greatest challenge facing the world? And do you think that it can be appropriately addressed at the state level? If so, how will you lead on this issue?
Mm-hmm. I mean, along with war and poverty, it certainly is the greatest challenge facing the world. Sarah and I saw it. The big question in our house is whether we should allow the kids to see it, because this thing is scarier than Friday the 13th Part 3 and Halloween and Psycho. It's terrifying. You know, this year, up till now, is the hottest year on record since they started keeping records in 1895. 2005 was hotter than 2004, hotter than 2003, hotter than 1998, which was the hottest year in the 20th century. There are dragonflies and mosquitoes on the North Pole, and we saw what took place with Katrina. Global warming is threatening all of the coastal regions of this country, including, of course, our beloved coastline in Maryland. So this is not just an issue, my friends. This is the whole context within which we have to decide everything else we do, from the transportation issues and ICC and Purple Line to public health to campaign finance because we can no longer afford short-sighted policies that are threatening the future of our kids and our grandchildren. So I want to be a champion of environmental change. I want Maryland to spearhead and lead a Mid-Atlantic Regional Compact with Virginia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and the District of Columbia to dramatically lower greenhouse gas emissions, and I will make it happen with Governor O'Malley.
Senator Rubin.
Thank you very much. I believe that global warming is something to fear and something we must address. I don't think we can do it alone with one state. You can say you're going to, and we should try, because we have to do something about the emissions in our cars. We have to do something about the emissions that are on the Beltway. I will tell you that my community is right in the middle of the Beltway, and they receive the emissions every day at rush hour, and they sit there in gridlock like a parking lot. Something has to be done to address that issue. It's something that we have to make sure that everyone in this country cares about, because it's not just an idea. There are some people that are challenging the global warming. I feel it's real. I feel that we have to try and see what we can do to address it. I think we need the rest of the world to realize that they have to be part of it too, because if they're not, all that air will be stagnant and stay in one area. We can't contain it if it's coming from another area. We can do all we want, but we have to make sure that we have partners in this that will allow their states to do the same thing that we're doing, because if not, we will be spinning wheels. We can't just say Maryland is going to do it and nobody else, because it won't work, ladies and gentlemen. I believe we have to make it work. We have to go to our neighbors and the states in the Midwest where the air keeps coming our way. And we have to try and get the other countries to say we have to address this. Yes, it's an issue. Yes, we're concerned about it. Yes, I want to do something about it. And I want to work with the United States Congress and make sure that it happens. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, our renewable portfolio standard requires that 7.5% of the energy sold, electricity sold in Maryland, be coming from clean and renewable sources by 2014. And it's something, but it's too slow. We got to double that. We should go to 15% by 2015, and that's what the Chesapeake Climate Action Network is calling for. I also would go back to the utilities that have made hundreds of millions of dollars over this flawed energy deregulation going back to 1999, and I would require them to invest at least $20 million a year in a public benefits fund that will offer financial and tax incentives to consumers and small businesses who invest in energy efficiency. We should take some money back from the utilities to make energy efficiency happen in the state of Maryland. And I also
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Senator Rubin.
Thank you very much. You know, we worked very hard in this recent special session to try and address the issue at hand. The issue at hand is that Governor Ehrlich appointed people that were leaning and talking to the industry and doing what they wanted. They were setting the stage and the rules and the regulations according to what the electric companies wanted. We took care of that. We ousted them with a bill. The first bill in deregulation, we charged the Public Service Commission to find a way to market the energy in a safe way. They did not do their job. We're saying we hope the courts will throw out these people. They do not belong there. They are not consumer-oriented. They don't care about you. They care about the utilities. And I want them out because we won't have a decent place.
Thank you. Senator Rubin, I think both of you have stated that you support universal health care. If I'm correct on that. In the absence of federal action to provide universal health coverage, some states are stepping up and pressing for their own comprehensive reforms. What specifically would you support or propose for Maryland to make sure that health concerns are taken care of?
Well, first of all, there is a bill that will be proffered, and I have also sponsored a bill to do just that, to add a $1 tax onto the tobacco, onto cigarettes and tobacco, to ensure that we have money to fund the universal health care bill that was proffered offered in Maryland. It is not easy to get the votes to do that. I have had a bill in to do the $1 tax. I've had a bill in to raise the liquor, the wine, and the beer tax because they haven't been raised since 1955 for liquor and 1971 for beer and wine. That's where the money can come from. We also have to find a way, ladies and gentlemen, to have the courage to vote for increases if necessary. We need new revenue. And again, I want to say, all we're told is if you pass slots, we will give you the revenue for the world. That's not going to happen as far as I'm concerned. Slots are out of the question to fund. I'm prepared to vote for revenue increases where we feel we can find the right dollars to cover health care. That is extremely important because without the health care, we will have people on the streets. We cannot afford that. We need to ensure that every person in this state, in fact, if the Congress would pass it, every person in this country should have the proper health care coverage and not have to worry about whether they're going to eat that night or have money for their rent or do anything else. We need to ensure health coverage for everyone if it means raising revenue. Thank you. Let me just say that it's not easy to find solutions because you don't always have the votes. You can go in there the first day and say, I'm going to do this. It doesn't happen that way, ladies and gentlemen. From the vantage point of budget and tax, and I will be on budget and tax, you find the ways to do that. I am in the front row as a leader, and I intend to stay there. Thank you.
Well, let me just say something of a general nature about this point, because Senator Rubin invites us to believe, I think, contrary propositions. On the one hand, that her presence in the leadership is indispensable because she's able to get so many things done. But on the other hand, she can't get any legislation through, the legislation that we want, about health care reform, about the environment, about smoking and so on, which has failed several times over the last several sessions. Maybe we're doing something wrong. That is, maybe the paradigm shouldn't be we send our senator to Annapolis to fight against Baltimore, the big bad guys in Baltimore, and fight against Prince George's County, because these people are trying to steal our money and they think our streets are lined with gold. Maybe they've been listening to some of your campaign statements about our streets being lined with gold. Maybe we should turn it around and say, look, let's reach out to the people from Baltimore and Prince George's County. We've got 47 senators. 33 of them are Democrats. A majority of them are from those three jurisdictions. Let's build coalitions. Let's create a vision for universal health care. Massachusetts did it. Let's make it happen in Maryland. Let's go out and campaign for it. Senator Rubin, I'm not saying that I'm going to go to Annapolis and snap my fingers and this is going to happen. We can do it incrementally, but we need a vision and we need a goal and we need to unify people across the state and people in the Eastern Shore and Western Maryland and Central Maryland. Let's go out and campaign for it. Let's organize. Let's mobilize. Let's march. Let's build on the extraordinary resources and experiences and genius and creativity of the people right here in this district to make Maryland the first state in our region to have health care for everybody. Let's do it. Now,
we'll get another minute in a second. We'll be back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I will tell you that the lobbyist for the Universal Health Care bill was one of the most successful individuals ever to move. He got the gun control bill through, which was almost impossible. I think my opponent may not have heard me say how I've helped the city. I've helped Prince George's. I've said to them, whatever you want is fine as long as I get what I need for Montgomery County. Prince George's has helped. Let me tell you what I was able to do. WMATA was not getting, that's Washington Metropolitan Transit Association. That's our metro system, ladies and gentlemen. We were only getting 75% of that funding for our capital budget. We were losing millions of dollars as compared to the Maryland Transit Association, which funds the Baltimore City and surrounding environs of Baltimore City. I got a bill through, and I slipped it through with a friend from Baltimore City, and the chairman was from Baltimore City, and she was opposed to it.
Thank you.
I had helped this person. He helped me. He spoke for it, and I got that bill through the House and the Senate. And we have millions of dollars to prove it.
Thank you. Oh, you're on.
I want us to transcend the balkanized parochial politics of let us bring home a little bit of bacon, some bacon bits for our constituents, so we can tell them they've got to vote for us, and you do the same. Why don't we act as Marylanders? Why don't we ask what kind of state we want to live in? Do we want to live in a state where there are 800,000 people who have no relationship to a primary health care provider, to a doctor? It's dangerous. It's unethical. It's wrong. It's costly because people are ending up in emergency rooms. Do you know that Shady Grove Hospital is the busiest emergency room in the entire East Coast, and that they have to call police officers to come to try to control the crowds that try to get into the emergency room? So I talked to Martin O'Malley about this at that fundraiser in Baltimore, Senator, and I said, we need a commitment that on a date certain we will have health care for everybody in Maryland, and let's start with the kids. Let's get every kid a doctor in the state of Maryland.
Thank you. Give another health check. Mr. Raskin, a few years ago, the state of Maryland and counties of Maryland had a debate over who would be stuck with the responsibility for the mentally ill Marylanders. As a result, many individuals fell through the cracks. What is the state's responsibility when it comes to the mentally ill?
I think it's critical. And when I'm out knocking on doors, I hear about this all the time. I'd say from about every third or fourth house, someone tells me about a situation with someone in their family or a close friend. God bless Doug Duncan for the class that he showed when he went public with his depression and the recommendation of his doctor. But imagine what would have happened had he not had health care insurance. That's the situation a lot of people find themselves in. The state government, the federal government, are pulling the plug on community mental health. And I would like to see, as a step towards universal health care, an accelerated investment in community health and wellness clinics all over the state. And I think that mental health has to be a critical aspect of community health clinics. We've got to emphasize disease prevention. We have to emphasize prevention of kids from using drugs, getting people off of drugs and alcohol, and we have to get people to see doctors if they are having mental health problems. And so that's got to be a very serious commitment of our party. And as a state senator, I will champion legislation that will put dollars into the communities to address the mental health needs of the people.
Thanks. We have more time. Senator Rubin.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, at one point, the state was supposed to deinstitutionalize their mental health patients. It was a mandate that we had to have in this state in order to ensure that these people were not in a restricted setting. I sponsored and got through the bill for deinstitutionalization many, many years ago. Following that, you were supposed to have follow-up service, but it cost money. And what happened was they did not, the governor puts the money in the budget. There was not sufficient dollars in the budget to do just that. Then we had group homes, and the group homes did not sufficiently address the problem because there's a waiting list. We need more dollars. Being on budget and tax, I will tell you, is the way you get those dollars. My colleague said that dollars aren't important, but he just said that we've got to put more money into these programs, and he's absolutely right. I agree with you. But you have to be able to put those dollars in the budget. You know, our governor is the one that puts all the money into the budget. We can't change it. We can only cut it, except in the capital budget. We can do anything we want with what he sends down, and we have. I want to make sure that we have the services needed by the mental health patients that need it. We need follow-up, and we do need the dollars to do that. I want to go back and ensure that we have that. You know, you talked about Shady Grove Emergency Center. The Shady Grove Emergency Room. It's really bad, but I want you to know that this summer, next month, Shady Grove is opening a new emergency center in the northern part of the county, to ensure that we have enough people that can come in and be served. I can assure you that wherever there's a problem, the hospitals are looking to resolve it. Holy Cross opened one in downtown Silver Spring. That was going to be taken out of the budget in the conference committee. There was someone in there that saved that money over the weekend, and that was me.
Would you like to respond?
Sure. Let me just talk generally about this question of effectiveness. So I think one dimension of effectiveness is longevity of service. Another dimension is personal relationships and ability to work with lots of people, not to have enemies lists, not to vilify other leaders, not to isolate them and castigate them. Another element of effective leadership is hard work and energy. And I want to say on this campaign, I'm going to bed every night at 12:30. I wake up at 6 in the morning, and I campaign for 17 or 18 hours, and most of it is I'm out knocking on doors and meeting with people in this district. I will not stop. Well, I'll stop for a week after the primary election, because I promised Sarah I would. But I will not stop this kind of commitment to the needs and the priorities and values of the people of District 20. And I want to say this. I've been portrayed a little bit, I think, in one of Senator Rubin's push polls as young, inexperienced, and not involved in the community, I think was one of the quotes that came back.
Thank you.
Well, some of that's unfair. I'll address that. I'll address that when I get a moment. So.
Yeah.
Senator Rubin.
Let me just say that my poll was done by a professional firm. I did not have anything to do with the questions. I will tell you that it was not a push poll. I said that it was the only stipulation I had. Is he young? I think to many of us he is. Is he experienced in legislation? I don't think so. He hasn't been in the Senate or in the House in Maryland. He may be on the Hill, but the Hill is different than Maryland. Has he been elected to office? No, he hasn't, and that's what the question was. Those 3 items. Nothing else, ladies and gentlemen. That's the only time that he was mentioned, because I went and looked at it, and people are going like this. That was true. What is the concern? Young, has never been elected to office, and hasn't had legislative experience. That was the question that was challenged. Now, let me just go back a few moments and tell you that I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
that worked out evenly for everybody.
Governor Glendening in 2000 appointed me to chair Maryland's State Higher Education Labor Relations Board. In a period of 3 months, I wrote with my colleagues a set of rules and regulations to define the rights of union organizing, free speech, fair elections, and collective bargaining on the state's university and college campuses. It's now considered a model nationally. And let me say this. In those 5 years, I had a 5-year term, and then Governor Ehrlich was in office. In those 5 years, more than 7,000 low-wage workers organized into unions on our campuses, dining hall workers, janitors, maids, secretaries, library assistants. It was the signal triumph of the labor movement in Maryland over the last decade. So you can call me young and you can call me inexperienced if you like, but please don't take away the things that I've done for the people of Maryland, because that hurts my feelings a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, when Mr. Raskin was appointed to that board, there is a process that he must go through in order to have that appointment. You must go through what we call the Executive Nominations Committee of the Senate. Mr. Raskin, do you want to tell the people who introduced you to the Executive Nominations Committee and ask them to please confirm your nomination? Okay?
Hey, Senator Rubin, I never said I disagreed with everything you've done.
Well, let me just, wait a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to make it clear that if you don't get through the Executive Nominations Committee, you don't receive the appointment. And I made sure that Mr. Raskin received that appointment. And it was a big step for him. I think he did fine. Please, I don't believe that every time you see something that you don't like, that you go to the newspapers and cry about it. I've seen things I don't like, and I don't go to the newspapers. And I will tell you,
Okay.
I will tell you, if I may?
What's that?
If I finish?
Finish your sentence.
Okay. I will tell you that I respect what comes out that is positive, any positive kinds of exercise or experience or proposals, I respect. I don't intend to be negative, and I would hope that my opponent would begin to realize that he shouldn't. Thank you.
Okay. 8:50 was the minute that I lost control. Just keeping track here. Let's move on. We have another 40 minutes. I'm sure all of this stuff will come around again. I want to ask a question about transportation, and we'll start with you, Ms. Rubin. How will you deal with the overburden of traffic on East-West Highway and Georgia Avenue? 2,500 new residents are planned to be built in South Silver Spring in the next 2 years. What is your plan to help alleviate traffic congestion in our district?
I think the Purple Line is one of the most important things to address at this time, and I feel that that will be done because we need the transportation not only from Bethesda to Silver Spring, but we need to bring it into New Carrollton. That will take quite a bit of the traffic off of East-West Highway. The development that's going to be done, and I don't have anything to do with it, that's a local thing. But that, from what I know, the development that's going to be done is going to be around the metro station with limited parking so that people know they must use public transportation. I believe that we have to have more public transportation. We cannot go it alone without the assistance from other jurisdictions. But you just don't get it all from Montgomery County. You have to work with other jurisdictions like we have done. I got the money for the environmental impact statement for the Purple Line. It was going to be taken out. I'll tell you that again, and there was going to be language put in there. I was able to keep that money in. I was able to change the language so that it was positive. I worked with the Prince George's County legislators, senators, and made sure that we agreed with how to approach this issue. I will do that and continue to do that. The money that I was able to get, the 25% difference between the 100% and the 75% with the bill I put in, brought us millions and millions of dollars to Montgomery and Prince George's County. That's what I intend to keep doing, to get more public transportation. We need it. We are going to put the Purple Line into being, and we're going to protect the neighborhoods when we do it, because we've got to make sure, since it wasn't on the master plan, that we are very cautious about impacting on people's homes. And I will be there to make sure that we do it properly.
Thank you.
Governor Glendenning had the right idea with smart growth. We don't want to continue to devour the land, the wetlands. We need to develop in where we already have infrastructure, so it's cheaper to do it that way, and it's the environmentally smart way to do it. And so the Purple Line is absolutely key, and I will be the state senator who actually makes the Purple Line, rather than the ICC, a key legislative priority and makes it happen. And I will do it in a way that's consistent with the values and the aesthetics and the everyday life of the communities that are going to be affected by it. But I still can't quite get over this going to the newspapers and crying about it comment. So forgive me if I could just say a word about that. I assume that the allusion, Senator, is to the endorsement that I'm extremely proud of that I received from the Blair High School Silver Chips newspaper. And this endorsement, which I heartily recommend to all of you who haven't read it yet, you can check it out on my website, is about the intense hard work I've done for the public schools. And you know, Sarah and I have 3 kids, Hannah, Tommy, and Tabitha, and you can clap if you'd like. They've been out there working so hard and learning so much here. But I'm totally devoted and committed to public schools and the students. And Senator Rubin, according to the Washington Post, called up the principal and the journalism advisor and demanded to know what was going on with the students and to see the notes and wanted a retraction and equal time and so on. And the students, according to the Washington Post, acted like pros and said they stood on their First Amendment rights. And I was proud of them because I wrote a book for students called We the Students, and I have a program, the Marshall Brennan Constitutional Literacy Project, which I'll tell you about.
Thank you, Mr. Raskin, for bringing that up, because I do want to speak about that. First of all, let me tell you how much I care about the students at Blair. This is not just something that happened. I care about their well-being, their education, and most importantly, their freedom of speech. I did not ask for that statement to be retracted. There was a lot of miscommunication, and there was a lot of unsolved words. I will tell you that I care dearly about education. I have worked with the families of Blair to ensure that we got the Blair site that we did. I worked diligently to bring home money that they wouldn't get through the formula that they get as far as their full-time enrollees. I have made sure that I've gone to their classes and spoken to the civics classes and told them to get involved. I think they have to be involved. They have to go out and support candidates. I think that's important. They have to have the personal experience. I care for those young people at school. I have worked diligently to bring home the money for education, and I'll continue to talk about that. Thank you.
Well, let me just say, one of the things I'm proudest of about my vibrant, surging grassroots campaign is the young people. We have Democracy Summer. We have now more than 30 college and high school kids who've come to spend their summer learning the skills of door knocking and canvassing and fundraising and organizing. And we have weekly or twice a week, we have sessions with them where political people come and talk about what's going on in Montgomery County and what's going on in Takoma Park and Silver Spring and what's going on in the state of Maryland. And I'm proud of the people, and a lot of them are here tonight, and I want to recognize them. So thank you for being here. But Senator Rubin, I think maybe you missed the point, but let me just talk about what I will do in terms of my vision of my office and the integrity of a public official. I will never, ever use my office to bully, intimidate, or threaten my constituents, ever. I will not do that.
Well, you each want one more minute on this?
No, go on.
Okay, the Senator asked for another minute on this.
As she likes.
Okay. Senator?
Ladies and gentlemen, I called Mr. Gaines because I have called Mr. Gaines on any number of occasions to work with him. He's the most wonderful principal that we could ever have at that school. I have worked with him on many, many issues, so it was only natural that I called to find out and get a clarification of what was going on. I never said that they shouldn't have freedom of speech. I never said that they should remove the article. I requested that I have an interview, and I requested that it be accurate. Some of the things that were intimated in that endorsement, and I have no problem with the endorsement. I have no problem with the endorsement going to my opponent. All I wanted was to make sure that I found out the information that I needed to know about how it came about. I think everyone should have that freedom of speech. I feel that the kids there, the young students, the older students, should all be exposed to the political life that we have. That's where it happens. But I want you to know that I do care for those young people and will continue to work and care for them.
Well, just to say a word for the Blair students, since they're not here to speak for themselves, the editor said, and this was uncontradicted, I believe, that they called Senator Rubin 4 different times and she never called back for the interview. And so she complained about the process, she complained about what they said, and all the students said is they took information from her website, from my website, from the telephone interview they did with me, but they never got an interview with her. So that was all that really needed to be known. At that point, it's an endorsement like any other endorsement, the Washington Post and New York Times. The proper thing to do if you have a problem with it is to write a letter to the editor, not to call the journalism advisor or the principal of the school to complain about what the kids did. Now, and I appreciate the support, but it's eating up my time here. I give up. Okay. I do have one more thing to say.
And we could go back and forth 4 more times
I'm
on
happy
this, but
to
we're
take
not going
another
to.
minute.
We're going to move to the speed round. At this point, we have an open mic, and we're going to invite questions from the audience, and we'll need to have a path cleared coming up to the podium. Now, I have a feeling that we're not going to succeed at getting through all of the questions since we barely made a dent in the questions that were emailed to me. So don't be disappointed if we don't get to yours. If you do have a question, come to the podium. And for the sake of time and civility, I ask the following. 1, please get right to your question. Do not make a speech. And 2, please be polite. And also state your name and where you live. So, oh, is our mic at the podium?
Okay. First, about 100 of our neighbors have signed a Progressive Neighbors Voting Guide. Anybody wants to sign on, see me, see Esther Siegel, anything like that? Okay. 2 questions. The ICC and condo conversions. You must know that this district is overwhelmingly, this is Tyler Rubin, against the ICC. Overwhelmingly. I go to the meetings. Most of us, it's a boondoggle, it's a waste of time. When you endorse it and when you speak out so strongly in favor of it, are you representing the needs of your constituents or are you representing the needs of developers? The second is about condo conversion. Again, a number of people in my area, in District 20, were going to lose their homes because of condo conversion. They called you, they called Sheila Hickson, they called Peter Francho and the third rep, who I forget.
All right, I got
no responses. They had to turn to Grossfeld, Sharon Grossfeld, outside your district to get legislation passed. Why didn't you at least return their phone calls?
Thanks.
Mr. I want to answer that.
Yeah.
Mark Eldridge is in the room. I emailed Mark Eldridge back. He stated after I emailed him that I didn't respond. I emailed Mrs. Hill. Now, I email and respond to everything. And I may not say what you want to hear, but I don't want to be accused of not responding. When Mr. Ehrlich responded back to me, he removed my response to him. Now, let's go to the condo conversion, if I may, or the ICC, whichever you want. The ICC is going to be built. I am not doing it for developers. I am doing it because of the gridlock we have in this state, and people are losing the quality of their life. Now, not everybody agrees, I know, but I am telling you that most people in this area do agree. I know Takoma Park doesn't, but that doesn't mean that the entire county is opposed to it. It has nothing to do with developers. Excuse me. I do represent this district, and I will do as much as I can for the people in this Takoma Park area. Will you have 100%? You'll never get 100% from anyone, not even Mr. Raskin. Let me go to the condo conversion. I told you I answered Mr. Eldridge, and he misspoke when he said, and so did Mrs. Hill, that I didn't answer him, and I want him to acknowledge that because he acknowledged it to me. Well, I'll show you. I'll be glad to furnish you all my response. But let me tell you something. That bill was in the legislature. It was defeated in the House. All bills have to go through the House delegation first. It never came to the Senate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to?
If we don't let Mark speak, at least we can pronounce his name correctly. It's Mark Elrich, and he's a city councilman. He's running for county council here in Montgomery County. Let me just on condo conversion, because Mark has been very involved in helping me with a case, 641 Houston Avenue, where we had an absentee landlord from California, spends a little bit of time in Great Falls, Virginia, who bought the building about a year ago and decided to flip it and go condo. He wanted to evict the tenants a week before Thanksgiving and go condo. And I got called by the tenants, and they said precisely what Mr. Tabor said. They said to me, we've called Senator Rubin's office. We've gotten no response at all. She's not doing anything to help us. And they had some satisfaction with some other politicians. But in any event, they needed a lawyer. We stopped that eviction because it was an illegal eviction. We stopped the condo conversion. And we are now in the process of trying to negotiate a takeover of the building by Montgomery Housing Partners. And I think we're going to make that happen. And Mark is nodding his head affirmatively. It looks like that is going to happen. That's the kind of action and commitment and passion and dedication I'm going to bring to this job when I'm state senator. Now, if I could say this about the ICC, and I think Senator Rubin, alas, is probably correct when she says that it's a fait accompli. Passed in the Senate with her enthusiastic support, passed in the House, the federal government is there, and it looks like they're going to break ground unless something changes in court. So it's a fait accompli. But let's not pretend that it's going to solve our traffic problems, Senator, because the State Highway Administration says it's not going to relieve any traffic on 95, any traffic on the Beltway, or any traffic on 270 North. So it's going to do a lot for development, but it's not going to reduce our traffic congestion. You need a new senator to go in there and work for the real solutions, my time around, to reduce traffic congestion, and it's not the ICC.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, there was a bill that I introduced this year for condo conversions. There is a way now, because of the bill that I introduced and got passed, for this county to come in and purchase, have first right of refusal for any building that's going up for condo conversion. This will allow them to not just keep rentals for 3 years, but it will allow them to keep 20% of the rentals for 15 years. With the rest of the money, they can make it more rentals, or they can sell off the condos in order to maintain the buildings. And in addition to that, buy new buildings when they are in trouble with rentals and conversions. I did get that bill passed, and I'm very proud of it. And that was
Thank you.
Well, look, do I have a chance? Yeah. The bill that the tenants brought forward, the IDA people are objecting that it's not my turn.
No.
Is this right?
Well, that was equal. Move to the next question.
Fair enough.
If that's okay with you, that's fine. Okay, Mr. Lovelace?
Yes, my name is Patty Lovelace of Maple Avenue, Takoma Park, Maryland. My question is on the death penalty. What are you, Mr. Raskin, planning on doing about the death penalty, and what have you, Mrs. Rubin, done about the death penalty? Pardon me, Senator Rubin. Our society is judged by how we treat our inmates.
Okay.
We needed somebody with backbone who put an end to the death penalty.
Okay, and I'm going to actually keep you to a minute on these so we get to my questions.
Great, perfect. Very quick response. I have always been, and I am vehemently, categorically opposed to the death penalty. And I will be a vigorous, eloquent, I hope, and lucid champion of Senator Gladden's bill that she's introduced for the last several years without co-sponsorship from Senator Rubin to abolish and repeal the death penalty in this state. And let me say this. In 1999, Senator Rubin voted for a death penalty bill. Now, in this campaign, she says she opposes the death penalty, but I don't know what it means to oppose the death penalty if you vote for a bill to establish the death penalty for an offense. And so if I say I'm against torture, I wouldn't say I'm against torture except for really, really bad people. I would say I'm against torture in all cases, and I'm against the death penalty in all cases, and I will fight to repeal it in this state.
All right. Back
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I am philosophically opposed to the death penalty. I wrote in a questionnaire that I am for it in extreme circumstances. The bill that you have just heard referred to is a bill that would have provided the death penalty if an officer on duty, a law enforcement officer on duty, was shot in line of their duty. Now, we ask for our law enforcement officers to come in all the time. I get calls from this community and the surrounding communities and all over to help them with law enforcement officers. Call them in. We need help. Fine, I do that. But if we don't provide some sort of security or feeling of security for our public safety people, we are not going to be able to recruit new people. Now, I want to refer something to you that I have in my hand, a letter from Lisa Gladden. Lisa Gladden knows that my staff called her and wanted me to be a co-sponsor on the very bill that my opponent is talking about. I will be glad to share this letter with you.
I'll give you a 30-second response after, Mr. Raskin.
Well, let me just say, the death penalty, the strongest argument for it is that it would deter killings. And so I think that that's one that morally has to be taken seriously. The problem is that the states with the worst homicide rates are the states that have the death penalty, like Florida and Texas and Virginia. So it just doesn't make sense to say in extreme cases we have to do something to protect people, because it doesn't protect people, and we know that it is a random racial and geographic lottery in this state, and we got to get rid of it.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I know there is a disproportionate application of the death penalty for minorities. I voted for the moratorium and it passed, and we're trying to see if we can extend that moratorium. If we don't recruit officers, we're going to have a problem in this state and this district and this county. I wanted to refer to the letter I told you about. Lisa Gladden was called by my office and told that I wanted to co-sponsor her bill. They never voted on the bill in committee. She apologized profusely, and I have this to tell me that she was sorry that she hadn't put my name in simply because, and when it went in, but that she was going to amend it on. They never voted on the bill, so that couldn't happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for a very lively debate. Let me start off by saying my name is Ronald Schlesinger, and I'm a registered nurse here in Montgomery County in District 20. As a registered nurse, I have a couple of questions concerning health care, an area which I'm very...
Could you give us your most important question?
Okay, sure. Thank you. I've been reading in the newspapers that Washington Adventist Hospital, which is right down the street from here, they've bought a property out on North 29. What is going to happen to the indigent people of this area that will suffer if Washington Adventist Hospital moves? And what do you think you can do about funding for nursing and Nurse Reinvestment Act, nursing education in this very vital area? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. There was a bill before the legislature to increase the number of scholarships for nurses, which I supported and worked for. A number of years ago, I introduced legislation to provide scholarships for gerontological nurses because we're facing a big growth in the senior citizen population. Let me correct something that you did say, Mr. Schlesinger, and that is I don't think that any property has been purchased by Adventist Healthcare. Not that I'm aware of. They have not made any determination that I know of. I think there are a lot of rumors that are circulating. I don't know that they're going to totally leave this area. I don't know that they're totally going to find another area. My understanding is it's still in flux. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Raskin.
Well, let me say about this that the situation that we're facing with the removal of Washington Adventist Hospital is what a lot of communities face without access to hospitals. And this is why I want to work very closely with Governor O'Malley to establish, to reinforce, and bolster a system of community wellness and health clinics that will lead us to universal health care in the state of Maryland, and I will fight for that.
Thank you.
Okay, my name is Marina Curlo, and Miss Senate Ida Rubin. I want to tell you about education, and education is extremely important to kids. And when I'm old enough to go to college, I'm thinking of going to the University of Maryland. And I know the costs of colleges are increasing very high, and even though you've raised money, it's also hard for kids and their parents to afford to go to colleges, and that's why some kids aren't going to colleges, is because of the money problems. And since I'm a kid, I know about those kind of problems. And so I just want to see how you're going to handle it, and you can also help pay for their colleges, but since it's increasing so much, how are you going to stop it and make it decrease?
Okay. Thank you, Marina. Thank you, Marina.
Go ahead.
Oh, you addressed that to Ms. Rubin, but I'm going to ask Mr.
To me,
Raskin.
I'll be glad to answer. Thank you.
Marina's one of my supporters, so I'm happy to answer her question. Thank you, Marina. See how quickly I'm aligning myself with her and her question. Senator Rubin, do you want to take the first shot at it?
No, that's
Okay.
fine.
Tuition's increased 45% at the University of Maryland and higher education under Governor Ehrlich. But what I got to tell you about is that because of our unique constitutional system, the governor has extraordinary powers over the budget. And when the budget's presented to the legislature, essentially it can either cut items out or accept it as is, but it can't add money to it. So Senator P.J. Hogan introduced a constitutional amendment to change the system, to give much more power to the legislature over the budget. And I understand that Senator Rubin was originally a sponsor of this legislation, but was pretty much alone in the Montgomery County delegation to vote against it. And it was defeated just by 1 or 2 votes. And I wonder about why that's the case. Was that by virtue of being in the leadership that you feel that you had to change your position, Senator
Thank
Rubin?
you.
Because that was a dramatic defeat for those of us who want to be able to have democratic control over the budget.
Thank you.
That was an independent vote, ladies and gentlemen. I wasn't going to be coerced into supporting that. And I'll tell you why I didn't support it. Because many people, 180 legislators, would want to have something to say about how the budget is put forth. If I knew we could control that, I never sponsored the bill. I never said I was going to. I was one of the people that said no, and I don't know if Senator Hogan is here or anyone from the delegation to back me up. But I did not say I was voting, nor was I ever a co-sponsor of the bill. I want that clarified, please.
Okay, then I accept that.
All right. Let me just say that I worry about too many people having the power, not the governor, but too many people that will not let most of your legislators in on what's going on. That was my concern. 180 people wanting to have a hand and a say in how the budget was formed. I'm not happy about that. We can introduce bills and we can mandate action. It doesn't always happen like with the Thornton Commission.
Thank you.
30 seconds on?
Would you like to continue for 30 seconds more on education, or?
We can go to some
15 seconds. I would just say 180 people having a say in it is called representative democracy.
Let me say there's a lot to learn about the process in Annapolis. It doesn't just happen because 180 voices are going to say do it this way. It happens with cooperation. But when it comes to money, I can tell you that cooperation sometimes fades because everybody wants their project funded. And it doesn't happen. You get a few people in the back room and they'll make the decisions. I don't want that. I want, if I know we can have it done properly, I'll vote for it. But I told that to Mr. Hogan.
My friends, there are certain lessons I hope I will never learn when I go to Annapolis, and becoming a backroom politician is one of those.
Okay. Trying to be fair. It's,
I would be glad to answer that. We passed a bill this year, Marina, that capped any tuition increases to 5%, okay? So that the Board of Regents cannot any longer increase it more than 5% a year. Now, let me just say that there are scholarship funds that you can save towards your education, and it will pay the full amount. You don't have to worry about the escalating costs. And I would suggest that your parents start that kind of fund for you. Thank you.
Also, I think I'm going to get scholarship in politics.
Scholarship in politics. Scholarship for government in politics.
Good evening. I'm Dolores Milmo from the Audubon Natural Society. Senator Rubin, thank you for your years of service. As you know, we've always disagreed with you on the ICC, and I wanted to ask you, now that the state's study has been released, you've always said that it would take, the ICC will take traffic off the Beltway. State study now reveals it will not take traffic off the Beltway, 270 or I-95. I want to know if that's changed your mind, number one. Number two, do you support the $7 a day toll that the state has put forward in their study for a daily commute on that 18-mile road? And number three, do you acknowledge Robert Smith was recently fired as the head of Metro by Ehrlich. He was an Ehrlich appointee, and he spoke in Sunday's Post that the Ehrlich administration has obfuscated the whole Purple Line thing and given it lip service, and there is no money for the Purple Line because it's all being drained by the ICC. Do you acknowledge those 3 points? Thank you.
Okay, can you hold on one second? That's a lot to cover in 1 minute.
Well, it's 3 things. Yes, yes, or no. You know?
I'll give her my minute. Give her my minute. I will donate a minute to Senator Rubin to answer.
Number one, when the Beltway was built in the early 60s, the projections were that there would be 90% out-of-state traffic and 10% local. The studies showed that. Today, what has happened is you have 90% local traffic and 10% out-of-state traffic. So projections aren't always the same as they were when you originally built something. More importantly, I'm opposed to the $7 a day. Believe me, that's just pure projection, and people are escalating the cost by saying it's going to happen. And it hasn't been decided, so I would suggest that maybe we wait and see what's going to happen so that we can act on it. We have the power to do that in Budget and Taxation Committee, and I would like to have that opportunity. The other question was on how much money we will take away by the ICC. That's not true. We have what we call Garvey bonds, which does use federal dollars for the future. I agree, but that is not all the money that we will get for the state, and I think that for people to say that we're using up all the bonds, you had a very angry man. He was a very nasty man on TV. He deserved to be removed. He should never have said what he said, and because he's angry at the governor, he's lashing out at him, and I'm glad he's lashing out at the governor instead of someone else, but it's not necessarily because he is caring about the people in Montgomery County and how much money is going to be taken away by the ICC.
Is there an issue? Okay. When Senator Rubin referred to an angry, nasty man, I thought she was going to introduce William Donald Schaefer. And we need to talk about this because the comptroller is an embarrassment and a disgrace to our state. He has harassed women in public. This could have been my wife, my sisters, my daughter. He has insulted Asian Americans. He has insulted and defamed the memory of Thurgood Marshall. It is time for him to resign and to go. And
I absolutely agree that he should resign.
I will in my ways, sir. Thank you so much. And is the question on the table about the ICC? Well, I've made myself clear about the ICC. I think the ICC stands for the interests of campaign contributors, because I don't see how it relieves traffic congestion for us. I understand that the proposal was hatched 30 or 40 years ago, but it's a fait accompli. Senator Rubin's done a good job of supporting it and getting it through. But now we've got to deal with the fallout of it. That is, we're in a totally different context now, and we need public transportation.
Okay, I think we have time for 2 more questions if we do this quickly. So.
Hi there. First, before I thank both of you for the debate, I'd like to thank Marina and invite her to come to our Montgomery County Young Democrats meeting. We need more young people like that. And she also took my question, so good thing I have another one prepared. We've heard a lot about money and bringing home money and all of that stuff, and it's great about being a leader for the state in the money, but I want to know about the issues. I want to know about education. I don't want to hear about health care anymore. We've heard a lot about that, and we've heard a lot about money. What would be, other than health care, what would be your first and most important priority upon getting into the Senate?
Okay, let's talk about education. There was the COP Commission said we needed $250 million for state construction and renovation of buildings. All 3 of my kids have gone to school in trailers, and they don't seem to mind very much, but the teachers don't like it, and it's a real problem. And so the school construction is key if we're going to maintain the proper class size and make the real investment in success for every child and reduce and abolish the achievement gap, which has got to be central in our minds. We've got to get rid of that achievement gap. So school construction is critical. We've got to keep higher education affordable. We've got to lower the extreme tuition hikes that we've seen under the Republicans. I would like a serious scrutiny brought to bear on No Child Left Behind and the whole testing orthodoxy that's taken over our schools. It's driving teachers away from school. I'm a teacher, and I don't want my entire curriculum scripted by big corporations that are running tests and getting huge amounts of money from the public school system for those tests. So we've got to restore some education to the educational process and overcome this testing orthodoxy. I will be the education senator from District 20. I am a teacher. I am an educator. I've been a law professor since 1990, and the Marshall Brennan Constitutional Literacy Project sends 60 law students every semester to teach a course in our high schools. It started at Blair High School and Kennedy High School. It's at 20 high schools in the area now. It's spread around the country. I will be the champion of the young people of this state.
Thank you for asking that question. I have made sure that the money has been coming forth for school construction and education. We voted a record $321 million for school construction, plus $28 million for renovating aging schools. Montgomery County received more dollars, $40 million, and $1.5 million for $40 million for school construction, $1.5 million for aging schools. You're right about we have too many portables. The school across from me has the most in the entire county, 17. I made sure that they got a new school, and it will be opening the end of August. And I will tell you that education is my #1 priority. And there are many, many more areas of interest that I have. I have shown what I'm talking about. I didn't just talk about it now. I'm not talking about it yesterday. I'm going to talk about it tomorrow. I'm going to carry through with the work I've done in the past. I made sure that the Thornton Commission got through. That was the Education for Excellence, Bridge for Excellence for Education. I'm going to make sure that we get the Geographic Cost of Education Index through again. It was my bill. I'm going to put it in again. I was the floor leader on it. I got it through the Senate. I am going to make sure that our educational system is well funded. The governor did not do that. The legislature did that. He had to. It was mandated that he funded. He's going around telling everyone how much money he put into education. He had to put it in. There was no alternative. But there are other things that are important also. We need to have more care for the environment. We do need to address the transportation issues. We need to have economic development, because whether or not you think that my opponent is talking about my care about developers, I'll tell you again, the person that he's looking to is a lobbyist for developers and for corporations. So, you know, you can talk and say things, but I'm telling you what's true.
Thank you. Marlene was the last question.
Hi there. My name is Allison Powers, and my question has to do with animal welfare legislation. More and more people are looking to legislators to help animals suffering on factory farms In particular, hens that are crammed in cages so small they can't turn around and move and spread their wings. Pigs confined on factory farms where they can't turn around or lay down comfortably. So my question is, what stand you would take in regards to animal protection legislation and animal welfare initiatives?
I'll be glad to, yes. I have a record on that I'm very proud of. I have voted to protect animals every step of the way. Diane Nixon, if she's in the room, keeps me abreast on all the issues dealing with animal protection. We've had a number of them through the years. I think in the past 20 years I've heard nothing but phone calls from Diane and alerted me to something that I had to know, but I had already seen it and I knew that I was going to get the call. And I will continue to work like that for animal protection. Thank you for asking that question.
I'm also proud to have the support of Diane Nixon. I'm proud to be in very close contact with Diane Nixon. Diane has raised this as a serious issue in District 20, and it is a serious issue. What's the Democratic Party for? I mean, do we have the Democratic Party because big business doesn't have enough power? Do we have the Democratic Party because we don't have enough politics that doesn't put people first and doesn't put the environment first? Or do we have the Democratic Party as an instrument for the common good and for social change and for the defense of the defenseless? Whether those are sick people or disabled people, or whether it's people who need the help of government. And the Bush and Ehrlich and his team have made the government an instrument of the powerful. They've turned it into a war-making machine and a money-making opportunity for their friends. We've got to take the government back from the Republicans. We've got to organize people to kick the Republicans out.
Okay. I want to thank all of you for helping us test the new Takoma Park Community Center sauna. You can, the mayor's right here. You can let her know how well it functions.
Needs more money for air conditioning.
We've now come to the conclusion of our program for this evening. I do actually wish we'd go a couple more hours, although I'm not sure. I may be in a minority there. And it's time for our closing statements from our candidates. And once again, we'll begin with Mr. Raskin, and followed by Ms. Rubin.
Okay, let's see. There's a wonderful story about Benjamin Franklin, who loaned $100 to a neighbor of his, and then he said in his autobiography that every time he saw the neighbor, he suddenly ducked out of sight. And finally, he confronted him. He said, "Josiah, any chance of getting back my $100 and the interest on it?" And Josiah said to him, "Well, the problem is I can't pay you the principal because I've invested it elsewhere, but it's a really good investment, Ben. Don't worry about it." And Franklin said, "Well, what about the interest?" And he said, "I can't pay you the interest because it's against my religious beliefs." So Franklin said, "So in other words, you're telling me you can't pay me the principal because it's against your interest, and you can't pay me the interest because it's against your principal." Well, this is an election where I think your principles and your interests converge. I will be an active and effective champion of every interest and need and demand that we have in Annapolis, but I won't stop there, because I see us as part of the whole state. And I will work to build coalitions with other parts of the state for universal pre-K, universal health care, and the common good and the rights of the people in every circumstance.
Senator?
Thank you, everyone. Again, I want to thank you for being here tonight. It was wonderful being able to express our feelings and our issues the way we have to fight for them, and I intend to go back to the Senate and fight for the issues for all of you. I care very much about education. I care about transportation. I care about the environment. And so many things that you want, I want for you. It's not easy, but I want to go back. I am not running for a national office. I am running for the state Senate. I am not going to speak on national issues. I'm going to speak on state issues. I'm doing that because I have the experience to do that. I have worked for 32 years for this community, and prior to that, I worked many, many years for other candidates to ensure that they were able to be elected. I wasn't on the sidelines. I didn't walk in and say I want something. I worked very, very hard for other candidates. I worked for people that you love. I want you to know that I am going to go back, and I'm going to work for things that you want. I have the endorsements of Senator Mikulski and other national issues, Progressive Maryland, teachers, both county and state, firefighters, and I'll go on and on with my list if the time allowed me. Thank you.
Oh, go ahead.
Thanks to my wife, Sarah Raskin.
Okay. Ms. Rubin, Mr. Raskin, thank you both very much for participating this evening in the election forum. In the United States, we define our government as being of the people, by the people, and for the people. This concept is frequently obscured in the blizzard of a campaign and is all too often abandoned by office holders. So I thought it would be fitting to close tonight by remembering this: of the people, by the people, for the people. Thank you, and once again, a big thanks to Takoma Park City Cable and to the communication networks in Takoma Park and Silver Spring that helped publicize this event.